Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the podcast. Thank you for being here today. I know you're really going to enjoy this new person that we're interviewing today, Cassandra De Ann. Cassandra was born into a religiously abusive home, and her upbringing left her with a constant need for external validation. While her natural ability as a creative led to a successful career in the wedding industry, her quest for validation influenced a theme of continuous burnout. However, it wasn't until a spontaneous spiritual awakening during a solar eclipse, which is just fantastic, being that we've just come out of that. And I think a lot of people have had experiences with that, that Cassandra began venturing the path to deconditioning, healing, and self-discovery. So this road led her to become a certified human design reader, which I am totally interested in. Gene Key's guide, also amazing. Akashic Records Reader and Certified Galactic Astrologer. And through her work, Cassandra guides others to break away from societal programming and reconnect with their essence. And she shares her story in hopes of empowering others to live unapologetically as who they are designed to be. And it's so interesting, now I've been interviewing people who are really all talking about this whole business of being ourselves and finding out who we are and being that authentic person, right? So it is so wonderful to meet you and to be able to have that kind of conversation. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Angela. I'm really excited to be here and talk with you today.
Yeah, and welcome. And so tell us a little bit more about, it sounds like you had this spiritual awakening that happened during this eclipse. I'm anxious to hear about that. And then just how did you get to where you are today and what you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, like you said, I did grow up in a religiously abusive home. I can't say spirituality was ever on my radar. Um, my upbringing was challenging, and I actually moved out at a very young age. After I graduated, there was a situation in which my grandfather committed suicide, and it was sort of that catalyst for me of realizing some things at home. I moved out and kind of just fumbled through life. There was a lot of fear due to my religious upbringing. I kind of just went through, fumbled around thing to thing, and realizing now that I was overachieving and pushing and striving to sort of mask over those deeper rooted things that kind of wanted my attention. And then, when I was 41, I had a spontaneous spiritual awakening during a solar eclipse, and it sort of just sent me down this journey of self-discovery, coming from, a upbringing where it's taught me I'm not worthy. It taught me, all these things that were very hindering to living honestly a productive adult life. And coming to a place where I got to know myself and found an appreciation for who I am, stopped comparing myself to others, and embraced my authentic expression. And it just was the most incredible thing that has inspired me to want to help others do the same, to feel liberated in their own unique expression.
Mm, wow. And it sounds like you've gone through a variety of types of grief. Like it sounds like your childhood, maybe you might have been grieving the fact that you didn't have a normal childhood or what you thought maybe a normal childhood would be. And then, the suicide, that's a tough type of grief on top of any grief.
Yeah.
And so, you've certainly had your experience with this, and it seems like A lot of the people that I interview do have a lot of grief in their life. It seems like it is a bit of a catalyst to
Yeah.
bringing us to a place where we have to take a look at ourselves. We have
Right.
no choice but to start to really have a look inside and see who we truly are. So I'm anxious to hear a little bit more about that. You know,
Yeah.
how you came to this awakening.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, yes, there lots of grieving in the sense of not only this experience causes loss in relationships. Like I said, I experienced the, death of my grandfather, which my mother said was because he wasn't on fire enough for God. He wasn't holy enough. So the Lord allowed the devil to take his life. And so there was grief there. I've also in this path, even before my spiritual awakening, just trying to find some sort of sense of grounding in self. In that process, I was disowned by my parents. That was a very big journey for me. And also, when we're talking about grief, it's beautiful to become into and step into your authentic expression, but at the same time there is that grieving process of what is familiar. When you've lived so long under one umbrella of being, it can be very challenging to really grieve and let who you were die off, as you step into who you are. And let me tell you, there's been many days in which I've felt like, okay, just, with my religious upbringing, it was like, okay, here's the list of things you need to check off to be this like great person. But I never felt like I was getting it well enough. But some days I'm like, man, it would be nice to go back and have that list again. It can be a lot easier when we look outside of ourselves for, what we should or shouldn't be. It's hard. The process of awakening is hard. There were days where there were more tears than not, but it's a process that you have to go through. And the thing is life will constantly present us opportunities to address it until we do. We start to see patterns in our life and relationships coming and going, or behavior, patterns that we constantly tug a war with. And until we do that work, that is why we're here. That is the evolution of the soul, is to evolve and work through those things. So while it's hard, the loss is hard. Also, I've come to a place where, for example, I it was very hard for a lot of people when I was going through this to sort of deal with the idea of being disowned by my family. I would hear all the time, "Oh, they'll come around. They'll come around." Or another thing I would be told is they would just say, "Oh, well, you just need to forgive them and they need to forgive you and it'll all work out." And the thing is I have so much heartfelt gratitude for my parents. We're not in touch, but I know this was a soul agreement. And I know that the person I am today, which I love, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those very challenging, gut wrenching, emotional circumstances life presented to help me get and arrive to where I am now. So I do feel nothing but love for them and wish them all happiness. But I also think that sometimes in this journey, it's okay. It's okay to say, this was my path and they're doing their thing. and I'm doing mine, and I can't do their work for them, and I have to do my own work for myself. And sometimes that does mean loss of relationships.
Yeah. And as you say, that is so difficult. I mean, we can talk about the process of moving through that and getting to where we feel comfortable in that process. But when you're in it and you don't know how it's going to turn out or what's going to happen, and like you say, pieces of yourself have to die in all of that, it's oh, it
Yeah.
is not an easy process and not one we do alone. What I'm
Yeah.
finding, that was one of those things when I lost my husband. I felt like it was something that I needed to do internally. It was like people would tell me, and I mean, I wasn't the first person to lose their husband, and so other people have
Yeah.
survived it, and so why wouldn't I? Although when you're going through it, it feels like you're the only person in the world that's going through it.
Yeah. Right.
Nobody is feeling the same as you. And how could anyone else even possibly understand any of it?
Yeah.
Which maybe they don't. But I do find that if you can walk with someone that has been down that path and on that journey, it makes a huge, huge difference. So,
Yeah.
did you have that kind of support, or were you able to glean that kind of support for yourself?
That's a really good question. So I would say for the situation with my parents and healing from my upbringing, sadly, I was not able to find much resource and support. There's not a lot, I feel like, or at least at the time, out there regarding the challenges of breaking free coming out of that sort of religious conditioning. So, unfortunately, for that circumstance, I did not really feel like there was a lot of support out there. My husband at the time, I was grateful that he was able to listen. I think what is so magical about all of this is, you know, it goes back to that unique expression of our own soul's journey. And so for me, in my particular circumstance, a lot of what I went through, I was coming out of a lifestyle in which external validation was everything. Everything. There was no me. There was no, I can still remember being in our home after going through some of this and looking around and realizing there nothing about my home was me. It was a reflection of my mother and my husband's mother. I didn't even have a sense of like what was my style? Like what was my thing? All of that I just never had according to my upbringing. So for me, I feel like my soul's journey was coming to the place of feeling that personal self reflection and empowerment. And I thankfully feel like I was very connected to higher sources, such as I call my guides, helping through the process. But a lot of it I had to kind of go through alone, which while challenging, it also was what was helping build that character that I didn't have. In the very beginning, I will say I went down the rabbit hole of coaches and I would go to like one coach after the other coach after and I found often that it wasn't like while helpful, it wasn't exactly what my soul was looking for. And what my soul wanted was for me to take the time to sit down with myself. And I think when we're talking about grieving and these things, one of the biggest things I think that people can kind of glaze over or miss over is acceptance, in the sense of like allowing an acceptance of that moment. It's like we just want to not feel that way. We want to rationalize it. We want to move past it. We want to, have someone say it's okay, which is all great. But also, there's this tenderness. I feel like we're meant to hold ourselves. We're meant to say, this is okay. What I am feeling in this moment is okay. I'm allowing it. And I'm just going to take a moment to let this move through me. We have to feel all of the feelings. The more we resist it, the more we say, well, I just have to get it together. I don't have time to be fussing over this. I've got things to be done, doing. I need to, function in this thing and do that thing. And, that's often we try to just put ourselves together, look like we're together, pull it together. And we don't hold or embrace or allow ourselves. And for me, I found that when I communicated to a higher source, and that could be whatever, whoever's listening, whatever that is for you. Maybe that is God, maybe that is universe, maybe that is angels or guides or, ancestors, whatever it is. I found that when I sat with the intention of meditation was big for me, and allowance, that those higher powers helped me through the process. And I would have realizations of not just, okay, I'm allowing this, but a deeper understanding of what exactly wanted to be transmuted from that situation. And that's where the good stuff is like when you can get to that point of, I feel this way, I allow this, and you can get to the other side of pulling yourself back together and detaching from, in my example, for me, a journey was that victim mentality after being disowned by my parents. That was a big one for me, but there came a day where I was able to get past that. I was able to see myself beyond the rejected child and give myself new titles, that felt a lot better. I'm still not connected with them, but how I perceive that move forward is up to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you talk about the realization, sometimes that aha moment, like you say, comes through the meditation or just, you get a few messages and maybe you don't notice it. And then all of a sudden it comes to you, oh, this is what I need to understand. And as soon as you realize that, it's almost healed. It's
Mhm.
like you're three-quarters of the way there. Because you always think that
Absolutely.
you need to do something, but in my experience, just recognizing it seemed
Mhm.
to be the space that was the healing space. And then it just kind of goes from there naturally. But yeah, getting those realizations, and sometimes they don't come that easy. Sometimes it takes a while.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And meditation for you, how did you get started with that?
So, it's interesting because I never was someone very drawn to meditation, but at the same time, I think people have to kind of find what works for them. And for me, what I assumed was meditation was a lot of things where they would say stuff like, okay, close your eyes, picture tightening your toes, release your toes, feel your leg muscle, all like they would do stuff like that. And it never worked for me. So I don't have a constant running dialogue in my head. So I'm I'm pretty much, as long as I'm grounded, it's pretty silent. So I found for me, meditation was just listening to binaural beats or nature sounds and just stillness. I'm able to drop in fairly easy to that stillness. And so I think that I'm trying to remember when or what inspired that. I know after my awakening, I did, like I said, go through different coaching programs, and they talked a lot about meditation. But yeah, it's very helpful, I find, to myself. If nothing else, like I said, just like holding that space for yourself in that moment for what does come through. And while a lot of times, like I said, I can drop pretty easy, but if something's going on while I was healing, and even still today, it goes back to that allowance of what is coming forward in the moment to speak to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a constant thing, isn't it? It's interesting, you come through one of those aha moments and you think, "Oh, I'm doing good. I've figured this out," and you're skipping along, and then all of a sudden, bam, there's the next one.
Another.
I'm just thinking back to this morning and actually today in general. I came back from Bali and I've been so tired, like just so incredibly tired. Like I don't think I've ever been this tired. And I was feeling really good. And then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
nope. And there's a person in me that wants to keep going.
Mhm.
And boy, I've really had to work with that
Yeah.
because the body tells you. It
Right.
tells you. And if you don't listen, there's some
Yeah.
severe repercussions that come from that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
And also when if do you mind me asking, were you vacationing in Bali or?
yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and
With
doing some spiritual work, which on top, I always think
Okay.
takes a
Yeah.
lot more energy.
Yes.
And just the travel and trying to
Yeah.
integrate what I learned and all of that stuff. And then I think on top of it, there's a lot of solar flares right now, and there's all kinds
Oh,
of
yeah.
energies
Yeah.
that are at
Yeah.
play here. Like it
Yeah.
could be a hundred things.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, definitely when you do those sorts of things in spiritual work, I believe that you are activating DNA and you are altering the essence of who you are. And that does take a almost like a integration process of healing as your body is shifting and sort of like processing all those new beautiful things that you've unlocked. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it can make you feel tired.
Yeah.
Allowing is great.
Yeah. It's really been interesting. And it's
Yeah.
so funny because I'll have a quick nap and then I'll do an interview.
Yeah.
And then the interview's over and it's like, oh, I'm so tired. But it's like you say, kind of going with that flow and allowing that to be. And, it's
Yeah.
sometimes it's not easy, right? Yeah.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you're into a lot of different, the gene keys, the human design, and then I'm really interested in the astrology. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and what that is?
Yeah, yeah. So all of the different things that I'm interested in, basically I'm interested in them because they kind of help us discover who we are.
Right.
So human design gene keys do really good about understanding our uniqueness. Astrology does that as well. And then my work through galactic astrology involves a lot of Akashic record reading and going into past lives. So when we're talking healing processes, for example, and earlier I was talking about those patterns that can repeat. And, if we don't address the things, sometimes what happens is we can find that the themes that are playing out sometimes can have past life influences. So I have found in my work through reading that often a soul has generally sort of a handful of topics that they really kind of like are feeling and working through multiple lives. For example, one for me is relationships and my unique expression and feeling like it's okay to be myself. So I have countless past lives where I have kind of played with this concept through different scenarios. And so when we're looking at galactic astrology, it's a little different from regular astrology. I'll share it. Not ever. This is not for everybody, and I understand that. Coming from the religious upbringing, I was not one that entertained life outside of this realm,
Mhm.
but I have come to believe that in the beginning there was source intelligence, and this intelligence had the thought of, I wonder what it would be like to know myself. And with that, it fragmented. And these fragmentations became group consciousness and continued to fragment down to the I expression or the incarnation process. And I believe this all took place well beyond where this individual planet, Earth, was in the equation. So, when we're talking galactic, we are talking about soul origins and races of star beings that existed beyond what we know here as our humanoid vessel. So, galactic astrology is a way of, by studying the stars, that we are able to tap into different heritages of your soul's journey that existed beyond what may be simply here earth lives.
Mhm.
So that's a basic explanation of that, but it uses astrology, the Akashic Records, and galactic astrology or star alignment placements to determine all that.
Yeah, and that's very interesting. I mean, I've heard about past lives not necessarily being on Earth and all of that.
Yeah.
And it's extremely interesting and I've heard different people say to me, well, I'm Palladian or I'm Arcturian
Mhm.
or I'm whatever.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting though that I've never heard about the astrology having that piece into it. But now that you explain it, it makes perfect sense
Yeah.
that you could go back in the Akashic Records and
Yeah.
explore those. Yeah.
Yeah. What's so neat about it is it was introduced by a woman named Julia Blaz, and she is a QHHT, which is quantum hypnosis practitioner. And in her time, her work with her clients, she also was an incredible astrologer. Well, she started to realize that as their clients were in hypnosis, uncovering these incredible experiences, when she went to their astrology chart, she started to notice synchronicities. And so, over extended periods of time and study, she started to see the pattern starting to reveal itself. And so, through that, she developed the galactic astrology. And let me tell you, it is mind blowing
Mhm.
how accurate it is. And there's nothing like reading someone's records of that I've never met before and giving them these detailed, intricate lives that their soul has been on, and they just be completely awestruck because it matches an identical pattern to something else that they've experienced or noticed within their soul and this life, and they can literally see the mirrored effect. And it's just incredible. It's incredible.
Well, and it kind of connects to what we were talking about earlier. Another way to understand ourselves better, another way to
Yes,
get kind of like that aha moment. It's like, oh, that's why that keeps happening to me. This is what
exactly.
I need to learn, which leads to, that understanding and that place of healing, which is
Yes.
amazing. And so these tools and, the gene keys, I've done that before, and human design. And I've actually been blown away by those tools as well, by the things that I've learned
Yeah.
about myself that
Mhm.
I guess somewhere unconsciously, but just
Yeah.
having it put in front of you and you recognize it, it just opens up
Mhm.
a whole new understanding. And yeah,
I
fascinating.
love it.
Hmm. Yeah, so I love what you do. So when people come to you, do they choose like or do you kind of use a mixture of everything, or what do you do with people?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, right now, I have various different readings. The human design reading, I do have one more in depth one where I use astrology, gene keys, throw a lot of that in there as well. I've got like just a variety of different options for people to choose and select based on what they feel led to. And I think the fun part about it is I joke that it's funny that I do the work I do because I tend to be a very logical person, which is probably why I do appreciate human design and a lot of that more systematic study of who you are. But also there is that mystical side of myself as well that just it feels so beautiful reading the Akashic Records. So I think that it's good to have these things because it appeals to wherever you are on your journey. If you're looking to really just get to know yourself and the galactic stuff's a little out there for you right now, that's fine. I was there too. And so human design is always something I love doing. And I love the gene keys as well. That's most of my deep transformation took place through the gene keys work. Going through, yeah, that's a very soul searching work that Richard Rudd has put together. So I think for me, when I was going through my process, these tools were something that allowed me to feel like I had some sort of affirmation to support, to understand, and to kind of go through the healing process that I did. So they each have played such a and has transformed me, every one of them. So all of them are beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I will put information in the notes, but just tell people anyways where they can find
Yeah.
you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So probably I would say my website is my name, Cassandra Deann, DEANN.com. I have to say, as far as any sort of platforms, I love my podcast the most. So
Yes,
if I said
we didn't get to
anything,
talk about that. That's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, things I talk about. And other than that, I probably would say you can find me on Instagram. I try to post there, but I definitely keep up best probably with my podcast.
Yeah, yeah. And I did look at that briefly, things I talk about, which is awesome because it's very open, and there's lots of interesting things on there. So I encourage people to check that out as well, especially if you like listening to podcasts, which you probably do if you're listening to this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. So is there anything else you'd like to add before we go
Ooh.
or wrap up?
Oh, goodness. Yeah. I would say this. I would say, no matter where you are, whether maybe you are someone trying to work through challenging circumstances in life, whether that be, feeling a death of who you were. I mean, all this eclipse energy, like you said, and we've got more coming up this fall, so we're all, I think, feeling this process of self discovery and reflection. So, whether it's, redefining or getting to know who you are, or maybe you are navigating some difficult life challenges or losses, loss of relationships, any of these things, I just invite you to hang in there because, as I said, there is light on the other side. And while it is very hard, allow the tears, hold yourself. Just, if nothing else, just sit there, hold yourself, allow those moments. And eventually, you're going to get to the point where you're ready to pick yourself back up. You're going to have those aha moments, and you are going to be so much stronger. You are going to be so incredibly excited about who you are because these things happen and they're hard, but they mold us and they shape us and they strengthen us. And so hang in there, love, allow, accept, and listen to beautiful podcasts like this one here to help you along the way.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much again for taking the time and for doing this. I really, really appreciate it. And I want to thank all the listeners for listening. And bye for now.